Well, I have quite a convoluted history with regards to being in the mental health system. I was first admitted in 2006 whilst at university, and I had to take a medical leave of absence, and my place was open for 4 years, but I was unable to take it up due to quite acute ill health, and I suffered a number of relapses. Um, and it took me 4 years to complete my second attempt at my degree. Of course, throughout the course of my degree, I wasn't in a position to look for employment. And whilst at university, whilst studying for my degree, I was admitted as an inpatient under section 3 times. My experience of employment prior to that can boil down to 2 consecutive situations. There was one where I was a market research telephone interviewer that lasted half a year, and the other was working for a charity as a trust fund administrator. Apart from that, I haven't really had major inroads into employment. And I have a long gap on my CV. I'm 29 now, and I'm in a position where 21-year-olds are. So I have an 8-year long space I need to fill, which I think is forming quite a hindrance mentally for me in terms of entering paid employment. There's also the fact that, for better or worse, and of course this won't last forever, but the benefits system has been a good mistress so far. And yes, it is important because it does support me financially, mentally. But at the same time, it's another barrier because it's like, well, you go into employment, you lose your housing benefit, which means you've got to pay for rent. You lose your employment support allowance. You've got to feed yourself somehow. So that's something of a problem. And it's also the fact that it's a one-way street. Once you jump off the ship, you're not getting back on anytime soon. So fundamentally for me, the main problem is wanting to make the right shot and knowing I only have one shot to do it. Yeah. I was signposted to it by my community psychiatric nurse. He said there'd be a waiting list of about 2 or 3 months. It was less than that. I first saw Jasmine about 3 or 4 weeks after the initial contact was made. So I think primarily the breadth and level of knowledge that Jasmine possesses and has in terms of the resources and access to information has proved to be quite invaluable. It's also been a motivator for me to independently start looking for work as well. Yeah, and in terms of looking over covering letters and helping with CV drafting and stuff, it's really helpful. It's like signposts, there's things to do and things to complete, and that are discussed in our meetings. So, yeah, it's early days yet, but I'm on a lot of medication, and it was only within the last week and a half that my lithium was reduced by 200 milligrams to 800, and that was the first reduction in 8 years, and I can tell there's a big difference in terms of my motivation, my willingness and ability to get out of bed at a reasonable time in the morning and to actually do things and be active. And in terms of the support given by Jasmine, it means that I'm actually more able to action what needs to be done and be a bit more independent and show some initiative in that regard as well. So I'm sure that the input from Jasmine and my CPN helped in framing an overall picture of an individual who is relatively stable in his day-to-day activities, and that there's no untoward fear that the reduction might trigger off a hospitalization or a manic episode. I think right now we're looking at different forms of employment, different avenues, part-time work, for example. And with Jasmine's help, I've also applied for a role as a peer support worker within the Mental Health Trust as well. But there's a lot of competition for that. So we'll see how that goes. I don't foresee any kind of particular end state, as it were, in the sense that, unfortunately for me, I'm still quite undecided about what would be the right step to take. And this is something I can't go on indefinitely. It has that I need to come to some kind of a conclusion and stick to whatever it is that I decide to do. I think that because over the course of about 8 years, I spent about 3 years in and out of hospital, I tend to gravitate towards roles that have to do with engaging with individuals who have, as they say, lived experience of mental distress. And that's mainly because it's the only way that I feel that I can validate and make use of my own experiences for positive reasons and for the greater good. I know anecdotally there's a lot of stigma around mental health, a lot. And objectively speaking, I can kind of understand the reasons behind it. But there's a lot of double binds and catch-22s that people fall into, like, if you do not disclose your condition, you're not protected by the Disability Discrimination Act. If you subsequently wind up in hospital, they can just fire you on the spot or ask you to retender for your job and compete with other candidates or put you at a lower grade. At the same time, if you do disclose it, well then, if they have two people, both have the same CVs, but one of them has a problem, they're going to go for the other. So it is a bit of a minefield, and I think it's even worse because even those so-called caring professions, which should by definition be more open to different facets of experience, as it were, even they are just as biased as anyone else. So it's a losing game either way. And the final thing I'd like to add to the point is, what I find quite funny is when you get letters that are transcripts of conversations with psychiatrists and mental health professionals, at the bottom there's a little blurb about, supporting people and living an independent life and keeping people healthy. And then the last bit says, helping people move into paid employment if possible. So even at the upper echelons, there's this understanding that a fair number of people who've been through the system just aren't going to be able to find employment, Like, you had people who were given lifetime awards on DLA, lifetime awards. They wouldn't check anything. And now, with personal independence payments, these people are being told, well, no, you actually can work. So 30 years they've been living on benefits, and it's not a great life being on benefits. Okay, you get paid, you live, but it's an existence. It's not a life with meaning, because there is no structure. And suddenly, so it's just a mess, basically. So my life kind of lacked meaning and focus. And now, through the continued involvement with the employment advice and support provided by Jasmine, I'm kind of slowly, admittedly, and with a certain degree of, maybe not reticence, but hesitation, trying to just build a roadmap in a way, and hopefully I'll get over my fear that I won't be stuck doing the same thing forever.